Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Lowdown on Low Code. Hey, we're going to take a little different direction today. And actually, it's a direction I hope we can do a lot more in the future. And that's actually to go straight out and talk to practitioners in this space who are taking advantage of emerging technologies and doing some really interesting things. So, as I often am, I'm here with my co-host, John Rymer. How are you, John?
Very well, Rob. Excited to be here.
Good, good. All right. So, who do we have today? So, as part of our research, we've been diving into, I mentioned some of the practical applications of these within the enterprise. And recently had an opportunity to do a really, really good interview with our guest today on the topic of FinOps and some of the emerging technologies and how they can actually change the landscape of FinOps. So, today with us, we have Alex Landis. Alex Landis is a founding member of the FinOps Foundation. His day job is working with Snowflake. He's going to talk to us sort of at a general finance and FinOps level today. How are you, Alex? Thanks for being here.
Hey, Rob, John, thanks for having me.
Hey, Alex, we got a typical way we start this thing off, which is how'd you get here? How'd you come to do what you're doing?
Sure. Transparently, I kind of fell into it, I think is the sort of the, typical response for most people in their careers, right? I come from more of an analytics background, and so was fortunate enough to start with Autodesk in 2015, so 10 years ago now, within their finance org, taking on hey, we don't know what's going on with cloud right now. We're noticing that this is becoming a larger and larger portion of our P&L. It's this highly variable space. It's becoming more and more important to our business. Please help. Didn't really know anything about cloud. I don't think that many people really did have a good perspective at the time as to how important it was going to be to how folks run their own businesses. Didn't know much about FP&A, but I sort of knew how to put numbers together and sort of took it from there. So I was very fortunate to have that opportunity at the time. It's obviously snowballed into much more since then. And yeah, it's just become a real core part of my career to really understand how enterprises think about consuming platform services, how that then translates to value for customers, and just generally how to think about, making, like I said, these highly variable investments that folks are making into just more predictable parts of your business.
So you fell into the cloud,
Yeah,
went to work for
skydiving,
Snowflake,
right?
and things snowballed from there. A lot of weather here. John, over to you.
Alex, for those in the audience who maybe don't understand what FinOps is,
Sure.
or kind of where it fits, I know when we spoke with you, I learned a few things that I didn't know, and maybe just give us a sense of how you define it,
Sure.
particularly from the perspective of the FinOps Foundation, and just help us get a handle on the context for your work.
Sure. So the FinOps Foundation really started with how do you consume third-party cloud, right? Just like what I was talking about. That obviously became a real problem space, probably in the late teens, early 2000s, where again, it became like very material investments for many, many enterprises. Over the last number of years, that's expanded out into how do I think about platform operations and how that ties to finance and how that ties to overall enterprise performance. So how do we build real practices around consuming those different things?
Mm-hmm.
So now we're really moving out into SaaS, into things like Snowflake, where I currently work. We're talking about FinOps for data centers is sort of a new spot. FinOps for consuming AI tools obviously is a really hot topic right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really a place where you're talking about how do I, as a practitioner, either coming at it from the technology side or coming at it from the sort of G&A operations side, think about consuming these different tools and then what type of value that's adding to your enterprise.
Is it fair to say that? Well, first of all, I have a couple of questions. First of
Sure.
all, do you report? Do FinOps pros like yourself typically report into IT, the CIO?
There are a lot of different personas. Um,
Okay.
so you can have folks who are coming in with sort of a traditional engineering background, who then are tying that through to this sort of investment that you're making. You can call that FinOps. There are folks like me who are coming at it from the sort of analytics finance side of things, where we're coming at
Uh-huh.
it from an investment first perspective and then really learning about the engineering side of things.
Uh-huh.
Again, I think that that's also a totally reasonable way to do FinOps. You have folks who are sort of pure FinOps practitioners who are thinking purely about how do I make sure that pick on cloud again, is being consumed as efficiently as possible. And that is sort of their only mandate. So I think there's a lot of different ways that you can really, you know, uh, square the circle on what it means to do FinOps. You can have many different personas, but you can add a lot of, again, value in a lot
Yep.
of different ways to the
Yep.
space.
Second question was if we think about the crucial IT platforms, cloud,
Yep.
SaaS, now AI. Um, you know, it just seems to me that that FinOps is definitely going to be a growth profession because
Yep.
each one of these things is variable,
Mm,
and each one of these it's crucial to connect the spending to are we actually getting value?
sure.
Um, it, it, do a lot of do I understand you can understand how Snowflake or OpenAI or Microsoft or any of these guys would have pretty well developed FinOps practices, but do you
Mm.
find in the foundation that also banks, mid-sized companies are also, investing in FinOps, or are they behind the curve really?
I mean, I think there's definitely high variability. It mostly has to do with size of investment, I think.
Uh-huh.
Um, so, I think of folks like Capital One, for example. They're very, very sophisticated in how they think about this space.
Uh-huh.
Maybe not typically who you would think of as, the type of enterprise that would be like that. JP Morgan is the same. So like banks, right? And they've got many considerations that maybe other folks cross industries don't have just due to all the different regulatory requirements that they have.
Mm.
Um, just an example of sort of, enterprises that you wouldn't necessarily think of as being really high on the curve. Uh, Different government entities as well are like pretty sophisticated, and they've got all sorts of considerations that they need to make in terms of like how they can invest. So the way that they build contracts is very different from other types of uh, large user of these types of tools. But then in addition to that, the sort of traditional technology companies, I think, invest pretty heavily in this, especially as it's becoming more and more of a percentage of overall investment for enterprise. This is
Uh-huh.
a space that I'm thinking a lot about recently. Just like, what does the shape of a company look like longer term? Ties back into the conversation that lots of folks are having about like, are AI tools displacing jobs? I think that's a very hot topic right now.
Yep.
That's to your point where I think FinOps becomes more and more important in terms of an overall enterprise function. Because if you think about the pie of dollars that you're putting towards things, if you're assuming that your company is going to continue to get larger, you're going to spend more money, but where those dollars are going is just changing.
Right.
So if you think about, whatever, say 50% traditionally of your overall expenses going towards heads, as a portion of the pie, I think that that is going to shrink, not necessarily because you're getting rid of people, but because you're making the bet that each person is going to become more efficient and is going to be using more and more tooling.
Right.
And so then you're going to be investing more and more in a space that is touched by FinOps.
Right. Thank you for that perspective, Alice. Excellent. Rob, over to you.
So, Alex, during the during the interview that we did with you, that kind of led to this podcast, the research interview, you gave us some insight into the challenges around data and accessing the right data and what data you might need at any given moment in a day in the life of a FinOps professional. And it was
Sure.
a lot more sophisticated than I ever would have expected. Can you share with us a little bit about that?
So, a leading question, and if I don't touch on the points that you're thinking about specifically, definitely
Or here, or
redirect
maybe.
me. Mostly, I'm thinking always about the sort of volume of data that comes out of this space, right? So, if you think about uh, how vast the things are that are being offered by any of these services, you have to be able to understand each individual SKU and then how that's billed, and then be able to consume the pure volume of data that's coming in around that. So if you're using Google Cloud, you're turning on like one VM, you will get billed for that at a very granular level that you can look at. But if you're at an enterprise level and you're using thousands or tens of thousands plus of these individual VMs, and then you're consuming a streaming data source that has all of the usage data, all of the billing data for all of them across all of your teams, all geos, all corporate entities, you need to be able to do all the functions that you could imagine would be related to that, um, and debug when you see issues related to it as well.
So I love it. What I want to tee up as we're kind of finishing up here today is that we spent a little bit of time just talking about sort of the challenges that are coming with AI,
Yeah.
and how much more complicated and how much more difficult it is to predict that. Um, Quick break for everybody. If you like what you're hearing, if you like going down on low code, hit the like button, hit the share button. A lot of like-minded folks out there getting value from us, and we'd love to get the word out. Also, if you want to engage more deeply with analysis.tech, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to talk to myself or John Rymer, my background is digital process automation. John's the godfather of low code. We have Francis Carden, who started the first RPA company. Dave Marcus, who was integral to building K2 and UiPath in a variety of different capacities. Rick Greenwald, data expert, many years with Oracle and other database companies. The last 10 years, he's been with Oracle. I'm sorry, he's been with Gartner before coming over to us. Andy Bartels, former chief economist at Forrester Research. We'd all love to chat with you. So with that, thank you for listening, and we'll jump back into to the much more interesting stuff. John, over to you.
So picking up on AI, Alex, you've got all this data that you need to understand, and it's a dynamic environment, right? People are spinning up new resources, or if you're in the Salesforce world, maybe you decide that, well, we need to subscribe to MuleSoft as well, and basically it's on, I think the way you're describing your job is, it's on you to understand, is this in alignment with what we as a company are trying to do, and and meet our goals, whether they're profitability or growth or whatever. Tell us a little bit about how you see AI being helpful there? And I wonder if you also see AI presenting new challenges.
So I guess I'll answer this kind of two different ways. One is that I don't think anyone totally knows yet, which is good and bad,
Good
right?
answer.
Like, very experimental space. I think we're finding some interesting use cases for this. So, for example, you picked on Salesforce. Within Snowflake Cortex, because we offer some of these large language model tools through Snowflake, we're able to embed queries that can look at our Salesforce data and help to structure some of the unstructured data that's in there. Um, where basically you can like query all the records, ask an LLM to say like, hey, look at the notes that the AEs have written in for, why we're winning contracts, why we're winning new customers or losing new customers in a compete. Then you can make actual conclusions from that unstructured data, and you can do that all natively within the Snowflake ecosystem. I think that's a super interesting way to use some of these new tools, just to do things that like might not have been as evident in the past, or that might have needed a lot of manual intervention. Um, having used CRMs for a really long time, I know how kind of messy all that data can be. So coming at it purely from a like data analytics perspective, I think that's a just really nice way to sort of clean things up pretty quickly,
Uh-huh.
or not, right? Just to be able to use these just natural records and actually make conclusions from them. On a, whether or not you're getting real value out of these investments, I think again it sort of totally depends on which enterprise you're talking about. I think it was Notion, if I'm remembering off the top of my head, that quoted something recently about how they had like 90% margins before they started really having to pay pretty high fees out to, I forget if it was OpenAI or Anthropic. So, I think that's a pretty just like clear example of where folks are making these investments. Customers are using the tools, but it might not be necessarily yet totally passing through to, real business outcomes.
Uh,
Um, but I think that's probably going to be like fairly short lived, because either you're
uh-huh.
going to see things actually take off and, um, companies really start to make value out of these, or you're going to see people just pull back on their investments.
Right. Right. And it one of the things that I've found interesting about the prior conversation we had was to understand, oftentimes to understand, um, actually what is being spent and by whom,
Yeah.
for what purpose. Oftentimes that data lives in a variety of places. And
Yep.
so we've been looking into, uh, the the use cases where integration is and orchestration is really at the core, because the AI tools need to gather data from a variety of sources in order to help you understand what you need to understand.
Yeah.
That's different, isn't it? I mean, that raises security red flags. There are performance implications, et cetera. But that's the world we live in, isn't it?
More and more, right? Um, a couple things come to mind. One, since we were talking about the FinOps Foundation, one of the main projects they have there is called Focus, and that's standardizing billing data across all these different providers.
Mm,
Um, because even again, just picking on the cloud service providers, right? Like Amazon provides their billing data in one structure, Azure a different one, GCP a different one, Oracle a different one, Alibaba a different one. More and more, though, you're seeing them sign on to these focus formatted billing structures.
uh-huh,
If I remember correctly off the top of my head, AWS, GCP, Oracle, Azure have signed on to provide their billing data in these formats. That then is also branching out to other tools as well. And so I think more and more you're going to see both that being natively provided. So that just makes it much more streamlined for everyone to consume this data. And then, interesting opportunities to provide basically like a converter where you could consume, non-focus formatted data, transform it using the focus format, and then consolidate in one place.
uh-huh.
So that solves a part of that, but you kind of need all these different third-party tools to sign up for doing that kind of thing to just
Yep,
ease use of consumption.
yep,
Um, I'm hoping that there's more noise from enterprise generally as like uh, that not having focus formatted data is a blocker. I don't know if folks are really going to make enterprise business decisions based on that, but I think it's something that you could at least push on a new contract around, right?
right.
Hey, Alex.
Um,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I'm going to take us in a little different direction, if we could,
Sure.
just riffing a little bit here. So one of the things that we're working on a lot in analysis.tech is governance models around AI.
Yep.
So a lot of what we spend time on is AI and its applications against software development in particular, but also the output of that software, the
Yes.
business uses of that software. There's a lot of governance levels, levers, right? I mean, we have data access, we have security, we have privacy, we have compliance. All of these things are things that we need to make sure when we're invoking AI within an application, we're not compromising any of these things. And it's funny, if you look at the McKinsey study and the MIT study that talks about some of the failure rates around these things, so many of them are coming down to, look, you weren't really mindful about some of the things that we have to do as an organization.
Yeah.
But there's another one that kind of, in my mind, comes into a finance focus a little bit, which is, this is just a really stupid thing to use AI for, right? This is a really expensive way to invoke a service and do something you can do with two-step conditional logic or a few lines of code. Would you foresee FinOps ever getting into kind of the business of saying, you're spending too much money on things that aren't really good use cases for AI, for example?
I mean, I think that's the crux of what FinOps should be doing. Where we're really trying to operate at Snowflake, and like what I'm trying to make sure my team is always focused on, is not are we spending too much money or not enough money? I don't think that's the conversation that we should be having. It's more like, are we making the right investments? Granted, we have overall enterprise goals for margin, free cash flow, blah, blah, blah. But the conversation that I want to have with my engineering and product counterparts is, hey, are we using this technology in a mindful way to be able to build the things that provide real value for us as a business? And I think that's kind of what you're getting at.
A little bit, yeah.
And again, I go back to I don't know if everyone's totally figured out what those use cases completely are yet.
It's going to take a while, right?
Yeah, but at the
We're
same
going
time,
to get better at defining them. We're going to get better at providing logic to say, I'm trying to do X. This is the best way to do it, right? We're going to get good at that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that my team has been thinking quite a bit about is, can we use these tools as kind of communication tools, as translators? Because there's always a barrier between finance, engineering, executive, other stakeholders who just speak different languages.
Yeah.
One of the traps that I think my team falls into is like speaking accounting language to engineering. I don't think that that engineers are necessarily incentivized to understand accounting fairly, right?
Right.
You can use a large language model to convert a lot of those things into, hey, what's the terminology that anybody's going to understand?
Right.
And then be able to kind of draw the line across all the different teams so that we can all answer the questions that need to get answered.
A jargon generator.
A jargon interpreter.
Yeah, exactly, right?
All right. Listen, Alex.
I had one other question, Rob.
Oh, sorry, John. Go ahead.
No, and another thread, Alex, in our research is the trend to empower subject matter experts, domain experts, to actually sometimes create the digital tools that they use to carry out their missions. You don't have you're a numbers guy. You don't have a background in IT, it sounds like. What do you do? Do you actually use tools to create, and you and your teammates?
I'm a manager. What do I do? So no, I mean, I have very talented people on my team who are unbelievably good at building tools using some of these new available services.
Are they accountants though? Are they IT people, or are they developers, or are they numbers people?
So we tend to target folks who probably have a little bit more of an engineering bent generally.
Yeah.
Folks who come in sort of at like the analyst level have a background in like understanding technology. Frankly, I think the finance side of things is like the easier part of it to learn. And so if I can find people who have, a good understanding of numbers and analytics and those kinds of things, can understand, since Snowflake still is really technically a SQL shop, like understand how SQL works, understand how databases work, but also just have a lot of curiosity. Like those are the kinds of folks who I find to be pretty successful.
Right.
I have a lot of really high quality finance partners. I obviously understand all the sort of ins and outs of corporate finance and accounting, so I can kind of help steer the ship on those sorts of things. But the times that I've tried to vibe code a new app have gone fairly poorly. So I will trust that to the 20-somethings who I have on my team who are actually good at those kinds of things.
So it sounds like there is some activity, even if it's maybe not you, but the folks you're hiring, you're expecting them to be able to self-serve to a certain degree when they need to.
Definitely. I also think that a lot of the tools that we have now have helped me to self-serve. I can sort of make it all along in SQL, but like my SQL writing skills are definitely not nearly as good as a number of the folks on my team. But if I need to figure out something, I can do that. And I'm definitely much more empowered to do so now that we have tools that can make sure my syntax makes sense.
Right.
In addition to that, the speed with which we can turn around real dashboards and things that are providing real intelligence to our stakeholders has just dramatically increased. I'm thinking more and more about how we can automate more and more of the function that we have. So right now, we do a monthly forecast, and each month in people days, so like one person days, it's about 5 days of people time to refresh our forecasts. So 1 week per month is basically just dead time for doing our forecasts. I want to significantly consolidate that by further automating things. And then that would further enable the querying of that data using some of these tools that we're talking about.
Right.
One of the main questions that I get from our stakeholders are around like things that are in our forecasts versus not. And so I want to really close that gap. And if I can use some of these new tools in a very straightforward way to both have the huge amount of underlying data very simplified and very easy to access, that's when I think we're doing our jobs. That's the translation that I was talking about.
Awesome. Alex, thank you so much for those insights.
And
Really,
thanks for
really
joining us
valuable.
today, Alex. This has been great. First off, super cool stuff. If you guys have not, if listeners, if you haven't had a chance to check out the FinOps Foundation, check it out at finops.org. They're doing very cool stuff. Thank you, Alex. Really appreciate your insights today.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Rob.